Hi everyone. In today's video, we are going to identify inactive vendor masters in less than 15 minutes within your own SAP environment using nothing but set of transactions. If you have worked in procurement, internal audit, or finance, you have probably heard the term vendor master data thrown a lot. But hidden inside almost every vendor master list is a problem most teams never look at, which is inactive vendors. They sit there quietly, invisible on paper, but they can expose your organization to compliance risk and even fraud. So let's get into it. How many of you know what inactive vendors actually means? And don't worry if this term is new to you or you're a new auditor or you just jump into the vendor master management for the first time. In simple terms, vendors that have had no procurement or financial transactions during a defined period are considered inactive or dormant vendors. So, how do you identify these vendors within your vendor master list? Here's the catch: SAP, Oracle, or any other similar ERP system does not offer a standard report or transaction that gives you this information directly. That's mostly because the criteria for what counts as inactive is subjective and varies across organizations and industries. That being said, there are four signs that, if present, confirm a vendor or a list of vendors is inactive. The first is no participation in a request for quotation in the last 2 years. It means the vendor has not participated for the request for quotation that was sent by your procurement team in last 2 years. No purchase order awarded in the last 2 years. No contract awarded or active in the last 2 years with the vendor. No invoice posted or payment made in the last 2 years. Easy, right? So if all four signs are present, then it means that vendor or list of vendors are inactive in your system. Considering that those have not been marked for deletion flag or blocked for posting or purchasing purposes. So now the question is, why the 2 years is a criteria is being used to determine if the vendor is inactive or active. The reason is that this is generally used globally by organizations. However, you need to use the period defined in your organization's related policy or procedure if it is there. If it is not there, then you need to use 2 years criteria. But again, that's subjective and needs to be discussed with the management before you apply it. Before we jump into the key details, if you are still considering this concept a bit abstract, like what does it mean by inactive and active vendor, let me simplify it. Picture your vendor master as a jar full of pearls. The red ones are actually just painted stones, and the white ones are real pearls, but both sit inside the jar, taking up the same space, right? So, your vendor master works the same way. Inactive vendors fill up the space as if they are real active vendors, but actually they are not. So, what happens when inactive vendors are left sitting in the vendor master? So, the buyer scanning through the vendor master list for sending out the RFQ might include an inactive vendor master or list of vendors without even realizing it. Once picked, the RFQ goes out to that vendor. On paper, it looks like a legitimate, compliant 3 vendor bidding process, but in reality, one of those 3 was never going to respond because it's inactive. So that creates a real compliance risk and opens the door to error or fraud. So in reality, it would be just 2 vendors which the buyer has approached, but on paper it will look like as if 3 vendors were approached for the purchase decision. So that's why a clean vendor master protects your organization from both perspectives. So how do you identify inactive vendor master? Let's get into the main topic. You only need 3 things to identify inactive vendor master in your own system. First is the vendor master, created more than 2 years ago, but you need to filter out the blocked and mark for deletion vendors. I will explain in few minutes how to do it. The second thing you need is the activity report of the purchasing history for last 2 years, which means the quotation submitted and or the POs being awarded, which means the contract being won by the vendor. So it means the activity will determine based on any of these criteria. Vendor might not be winning the PO, but he's actively participating in the request for quotations. So it means he or she has submitted the quotations. Then it means that vendor is active. And similarly, it goes for the contract. Like if the contract has been awarded for the vendor, but no other like POs has been awarded, or they're not participating in the RFQ round, but they do have an active contract existing in our system, it means that vendor is active. That's why we need to look into all these three categories before determining if the vendor is active or not active. The third is the vendor financial ledger activity. So there could be a chance that the vendor, we have posted invoice, but there's no PO, no contract, no quotation submitted, and we are making the payments directly. It happens usually for the utility vendors. For example, your organization has been paying the government electricity bills, right? Or they're paying the internet charges. So for those companies, the organizations do not have a PO or a contract in place, so they directly post the invoice and make the payments. That's why we need to look into this report as well to make a decision if the vendor is active or not active. So assume your organization has 5,000 suppliers, okay, and these are the list of those suppliers: A Limited, B Limited, and other companies which exist in your vendor master list. So if you are determining based on four criteria which I showed you before, so you have to determine if A Limited, whether they have submitted the quotations in the last 2 years, any PO awarded, the contracts awarded, or the invoice posted. Any of these would be present, then it means the vendor is active. So if you use it that way, you can see that, for example, if you mark A Limited based on they have submitted a quotation but they never won any PO, or they never got any contract, and we never posted the invoice or any payment made, but they are participating in the quotation, then it means this is an active vendor. But B Limited on the other hand have never have any of those activities, so we would be considering B Limited and Y Limited as inactive vendors. So that's the process that we need to follow. But to get this information, I will show you in the next few minutes. So that's how typically it will look like in your spreadsheet when you are doing analysis. So that the list of vendor masters, you will be seeing the quotation activity, you will be fetching the PO activity, the contract activity, and the invoices and the payments activity. Once either of those will be active, then the vendor will be considered as active. And if all those categories would be inactive, then we need to consider that vendor as inactive during the last 2 years period which we have determined for selecting the inactive vendors, considering that those vendors have not been blocked or marked for deletion already by the procurement department. So we will need to highlight them and take it forward with the management for blocking or flagging them in the system. Now let's get into the how we can get the information step by step, starting with the vendor master as of date. So pulling the vendor master as of date of a given date is fairly straightforward, but there are multiple ways to get it. So in SAP, it depends on the choice of report, but it matters a lot. So for front-end users, the go-to transactions are usually MKVZ or SALR 8701812087. Either of these transactions will give you the list of vendor master, but neither gives you everything you need, specifically creation date of the vendor and the blocked status. So the safest and the most reliable option for us is SE16 LFA1, which is actually will give us the table for the vendor master. Why we would be sticking with LFA1 table is because it provides us the creation date of the vendor and also provides us the information about all kinds of block or deletion mark which have been imposed on the vendor master, because that information will not be readily available with these two standard transactions. That's why our best and the safest approach would be LFA1. However, if you do not have table level access, you can directly approach IT team and your organization to provide you the required data from this table, or you can directly ask them to create a customized transaction that provides the data from LFA1 table, but you may need to create a business case or a justification why you need that customized transaction. So Why we need the creation date is because if you are considering 2 years criteria, if the vendor master which is less than 1 year or 2 years uh, age may not be suitable for this analysis, because we still haven't gone past the 2 years criteria, right? So that's why creation date is very important for getting the vendor master list. Our second step and second set of information is purchasing history report. You can get this information for quotations, purchase orders, and contracts, right? So for quotations and for the purchase order, there are set of standard transactions through which you can get the information. From the front-end SAP, for quotations you can access ME4N. That will give you the list of quotations created during your audit period, like your period of analysis. And the similar information can be obtained from EKQ plus EKPO. These are two tables that will give you the complete set of information about the quotations created, POs created, contracts created. So it will give you the complete set of information on the purchasing documents. Now for POs and contracts, for standard report, for PO you need to access ME2N, or for contracts you need to access ME3N. So those two T codes will give you the list of POs created and the contracts created during your period of analysis. But as I mentioned, the same these two tables from SE16, like, which means from the table you can get the complete sort of information for the quotation created, POs created, and contracts in one go. Our third step is to get the vendor ledger activity report for last 2 years. The simplest way I recommend is to get this information through FPL1N, which is the standard transaction, and that will provide us the complete list of transactions occurred in the vendor ledgers for the period of our analysis. The second way to get this information is by combining these two separate tables together, and that will give us the complete set of information, the one which we will be obtaining from FPL1N. So what I would recommend is to follow FPL1N, which is more straightforward and the simplest way to get this information. So once we putting it all together, once we have gathered all these three pieces, combining them give us a clear, complete picture of which vendors are active and which are inactive. So quick recap before we move on. Our vendor master list can be obtained from MKVZ, but my recommended way is through the table, which is LFA1. But to access the table you have to get into SE16. Most probably in your organization, maybe IT has already restricted it because of this transaction is a bit sensitive, SE16. So therefore you need to work around it, like either you have to convince them to give you the access to the tables, or they can create a customized transaction which will be fetching the data from LFA1. The second source of our information is the purchasing activity, which can be obtained from ME4N, ME2N, and ME3N. Each of these T codes will give us the information about quotations received, and POs created, and contracts created. And the last information that we require is from the vendor ledger activity, that will be obtained from FBL1N. So combine all three and the inactive vendors reveal themselves. So that's the conclusion on the knowledge part. Let's turn this knowledge into a real skill. I have put together several demonstrations showing exactly how to pull this data from SAP and transform it into a usable vendor master analysis. Stick around to watch the complete video to get complete demonstration. So to get the vendor master list, as I explained before, we can get it from MKVZ. So if we run this report, we need to click on this icon. So that will give us the complete list of vendor master, because we are running it blank, right, without putting any selection parameters. So that's how it will look like. And you can see that we have supplier name, but we do not have the vendor code. So for that, I will be selecting from the available list. Once clicked, you can see that on the extreme right we have the supplier number. We have search term, all the other information like central deletion flag and the blocks, but not all blocks are here. I will explain in detail what other blocks exist. Maybe if you want to get into more details, you can watch my previous video. Here you can see that there's central purchasing block, there's block function, and there's central deletion flag. But there are two more blocks, like one is purchasing block and the posting block, which are not available in MKVZ. So that's why it's important to get this information from SE16. So SE16, if you LFA1 table, if you click this, it will show you the selection parameters. So here you can select the created on. So if you run it blank, it will give you the complete list of all the relevant information and the fields. Here you can see that like the supplier codes are there, then other information like supplier name, address, title, created on date, which was not there in MKVZ, created by, you can see that deletion flag, percent purchasing block, and you can see that posting block is also available here, which was not there in MKVZ. And you can see the block function, which was there in MKVZ. And then one more, yes, you can see that central deletion block. And yeah, that's it. So you can see that like there are additional blocks that are available here. So as you can see that all the relevant information is available in LFA1. We will be exporting it. So one way is that by right clicking and select spreadsheet, then name your file like your output. So for me, I always use vendor master, then as of the date and the timestamp, like when exactly this is what is being extracted on, just for the reference. Then click export to and save it to your relevant folder. Similarly, you have to get the quotations created. So for that, you have to get into ME4N, as I explained before. Select ALV as your scope of list, because ALV will get your output in a tabulated format. To run this report, you need the output from your previous vendor master list. Remember, like when we extracted from LFA1, so those 1600 vendors, you need to put it here as the input. So we will go back to our exported file. So here we have the supplier, the complete list. So 1678 we will be pasting here in the supplier field. So don't use Control C Control V, because you need to click on this icon, as you can see, and then we need to put the creation date, right, when exactly those quotations created. So for that, you have to select additional, which is actually the dynamic selection. Here you can see there will be a field created on, right? So if double click this, it will pop up the selection parameter. Here you have to select the ranges. So put your desired date, like of your period analysis. For me, it is actually 17th of July 2024 to 17th of July 2026. So click this, and you can see that now we can just run the report. So once click this, it will give you the complete list of quotations created for the vendor master. You have already put it there as a selection parameter, and during the period of your analysis. It will take just few seconds more. So here you go, you have your list of quotations. You can see that like all the relevant information is available here. Right click, click spreadsheet, and name your file and export it to your relevant folder. So once you have this, the list available, you have to make sure like you have to filter out the deletion, all the mark for deletion quotations, because only those which are not marked for deletion, it means these are the actual relevant quotations. One more thing is that I want to stop here, because why we need to select this A, The reason is that because when procurement department sends out RFQ, uh, it is not converted into quotation unless the vendor participates, right? So whenever vendor participate, like by giving the price for the items and or services which we have requested for, so the same process you need to follow for the PO report. You have to get into ME to N. That's the transaction to get the POs created. Again, you have to select ALV as your scope of list, so that like your exported information will be in tabulated format. Then you have to select the vendor list. This is the same process as I showed you before. So you have to select all the vendors that exist in your vendor master list. That will be your input. So we need to select this and then paste your vendor codes here. Again, you need the creation date, right? The created on. So you have to get into dynamic selection, PO header, which is actually will give you the created on. Select ranges. So there you will be selecting your the relevant date. Once selected, you have to press star. It will give you the list of the POs that have been created during the period of analysis, right? So now you have to export it. So right click spreadsheet and save the file. As I showed you before, the process is same, only T codes differ. So once you exported it to your relevant folder, then you can see that this gives you the list of your POs. Again, you need to filter out the POs that have been marked for deletion. So either the indicator will always, the standard indicator is L or S. So you need to just select blanks, which means only those POs which have not been marked for deletion. These are active POs, like the relevant POs, right? So that's how you will get the list of POs. The same process for contracts report. The T code will be ME3N as I mentioned before. Scope of list should always be ALV. The same process, you just have to put the supplier codes as we did for PO and for quotations, and the same process follows on. And for same goes for the contract date. Created on, you have to select this, select the ranges, and then put your desired period of analysis. Once you have put it there, you have to execute this report. It will give you the list of POs that exist in your system for these relevant vendors, right? Right click this so that you can have the option to export it. Click spreadsheet, name your file, and export it to your relevant folder. Once exported, you have it in your Excel format. Again, you have to filter out mark for deletion contracts, which I believe we do not have in our system. Yeah, so for my list there's none, but maybe for you there could be some contract that have been marked for deletion. Okay, so far it's a very simple, straightforward process. Now we have to get rid of our last information, which is vendor financial ledgers. So we will get into FBL1N. You have to make sure the fields are blank. Select all items. So here you have to put your period, like for which you're doing the analysis on. So for 17th of July 2024 to 17th of July 2026, make sure you select normal items and special GL items both, because there could be some transactions which are special GL transactions. I will explain in my another session, like in detail, what's the difference between normal items and the special items. So you need to select the supplier codes, which we extracted from the first step. So paste them here. Okay, so press execute. Okay, that will give you the financial transactions posted under all the vendor codes that exist in your vendor master. Right click spreadsheet, same process, easy peasy, right? So it's very straightforward. You just have to follow it step by step, and then save it on your drive. Once saved, so it will appear like this. So you have the document number, document date, posting date, amount, clearing document, all the details are here, right? What you need to do is just to, okay, so you will be filtering it. So there is document type. So there could be multiple different transactions. Each document type actually has its own description. Like document type means what sort of transaction posted in the vendor ledger. It could be just invoice, like for example KR. KR is the vendor invoice. You can get this information from by going back to the FPL1N or clicking this document type, then icon next to it. It will give you the description for the types, right? So copy and paste in your Excel file, or just download it, Control C, okay, and go back to your Excel file. Okay, I paste there, make sure it's in text. Okay, now in your data, use VLOOKUP, so you can add the description for the document type. Okay, select the relevant columns, 3. Okay, so you can see that there is a description for the type of transaction posted in the vendor ledger. You can see that we will just convert it into values, so formula is no longer there. Now, since we have gathered all the relevant information, we need to merge them together to have final analysis on the inactive vendors. So we will go back to our LFA1 exported data, which actually contains the entire list of vendor ledgers, right? Here we will be just adding the relevant column information, like the set of individual information we have already extracted from system. So we will name it a quotations activity, and then we will put our the period for which we are doing this analysis on. Then the second column we will be naming it the PO activity, okay, quotation activity, PO activity. Then third column will be the contract activity. Then fourth would be vendor ledger activity, so we name it accordingly, okay. And then because why I grouped them together, just for the ease of readability, because quotation, PO and contracts are falling under purchasing history activity, right? And fourth would be vendor ledger activity, which is actually only the invoices and the payments, right? So once we have these columns readily available, we need to use VLOOKUP. It's very easy, straightforward process. So you have to refer back to our this list. Make sure you are applying the VLOOKUP on those where you have already applied the filter, right? Since we have already filtered out the deleted quotations, and we have filtered only the quotations which are marked A, which means the ones where we receive the quotation from vendors. So that's why I'm just copy pasting the list, which make sure that only the relevant data will be read from. So this is the refined data, right? Then to get this information, I will be using the VLOOKUP on this, not on the raw data, okay. So we will be heading back to our main sheet, so I will be using VLOOKUP, okay, and VLOOKUP will read based on the supplier code. But here's one catch, this you will not find a separate column for supplier code, as you can see that, right? So what you need to do is that there's one column which actually combines supplier code and the supplier name, okay. So you need to make sure you are splitting it based on the space or delimit, okay. So that's how I'm gonna do. So you can see that this supplier list column contains supplier code merged with the description, right? So we need to use delimiter, okay. So we will go to the delimited, press next, okay. Since we are only focusing on the space, why? Because it will make sure like only the digit stays there, the rest of the information is irrelevant. So I will just be copy pasting the same column as it is, okay, in column H, okay. And once I have used the delimiter, it will give me the supplier code, right? So and now I can apply the VLOOKUP easily, because now we have the supplier code available. But make sure like this is in text, okay. So you need to, I'm just double checking like whether the delimiter has been applied correctly or not. As you can see that it's correctly applied, right? Because there's no vendor code, it's in the column L, okay. So I will be just deleting the relevant columns, okay. So I will convert this into text, because LFA1 exported data is always like keep the vendor codes in text data type. It's very important for VLOOKUP, otherwise your VLOOKUP will give you the wrong information. You can see that now our supply code is in text format, right? Now I will go back to my main LFA1 vendor master list, and we need to now if you use a VLOOKUP, okay, on the supply code. So I will just be using this simpler method, like wherever there's activity it will show us here, right? So it's not about like how many transactions happen, it's just about either one transaction happened, it means the supplier actively participated in our quotation process. You can see that now we have NS, which means no quotation activity, right? But wherever there's a number, it means that those vendors participated in a quotation, right? So I will just filter this and I will mark it as active, okay? So I name it that way, okay? I will, for NS I will mark it as not inactive, okay? So it's actually inactive. Then same process we need to follow the for the PO activity and then for the contract activity. So I just delimited for the PO and will apply the VLOOKUP in the similar way. As you can see that I have replaced those which have the vendor code, which means that these are active. So I have done same for the contracts and splitted the supplier code from the description and converted it to the text and use VLOOKUP on the supplier code, okay? And okay, so otherwise you can also use if error. So if error means inactive if the value returns positive, if not then okay. So you can see that NA are considered as inactive, those which return the value will be considered as active. So what we are gonna do, I will be renaming it to active, like those where the value returned, okay? So same process we need to follow for the vendor ledger activity for invoices and payments posted. So I will, so for FPL1 it's straightforward because FPL1 has account number. So you can see that account number is there, which is actually vendor code, so we don't have to split it or use delimiter. So I will just be using direct VLOOKUP here. So you need to bring the value based on if it is matched, okay? So selecting the right column, so same option like if you use if error, okay, value error. So I just marked it as inactive, so it will return inactive for NS, otherwise the value as it is for the vendor code. So convert it into values, so selecting only those where the code is there, which means these are active, right? So deselecting inactive, selecting this and renaming it to active. Straightforward, right? So far it's very straightforward. We got over all the values in the one data set. So now easy way is, now what we are going to do is we will be selecting a column, so only considering wherever all four are inactive, means these are our inactive vendors, okay? As you can see that no activity in all four, it means these are inactive vendors, which is actually our 1004 vendors. So we will just be adding a column. You can see that I will be just adding a column which actually make sure we are categorizing our vendors. But there's one more catch, as I explained it before. We need to filter out the block status, right? So I will be adding a column for block or deletion, okay? So we need to refer to, because this information is available within this vendor master list which we extracted from LFA1. As you can see that that's the benefit of getting this data from the table. So you can see that this central deletion flag, okay, I'm just changing the color so that I can club this information: central posting block, central purchasing block. Why I'm selecting this is because if the vendor is inactive and already marked for deletion or for posting block, then it means we don't need to highlight this, because it means procurement team has already acted on it, right? Like they have already blocked the vendor. So there's a payment block, right? I'm just scanning through each column. You can see that these are the standard columns even within your SAP environment. So standard deletion block, delivery block, and then okay, once we gather once we highlighted all the relevant block and deleted deletion indicator columns, right? So I'm just opening the filter. Okay, we need to club all the relevant columns information into one column, right? So I will be bringing all the relevant columns in one. Okay, so I'm bringing them closer. Payment block, similarly, once I have brought all them together, I will be bringing them to next to the column which I created, so that I can categorize which vendor have been already been blocked or not. So you can see that I brought them together. Okay, so wherever the mark X is there, then it means it's already blocked. Okay, so then I'm just combining all this in one column. You can see that there's only one block which is centrally deletion flagged. In your environment there could be multiple posting blocks, or the blocks happen, so you need to consider in one column altogether. Okay, so now I selected only the inactive vendors, okay, and those which are not marked for deletion. Okay, so blank will give us the right data. Now 997 vendors are these inactive vendors which have not been blocked or marked for deletion in the system, which means they will still be appearing in our vendor master, right, as of date as active vendors. Okay, so these are 997. Okay, I'm just pasting like I'm just want to, for the analysis purpose, I just want to see what's the percentage of inactive vendors of the total vendor count. So inactive vendors from 17th of July 2024 to 17th of July 2026. Okay, you can see that these are 997 and total vendor count. Okay, so I'm now categorizing them so that based on if there's no activity in all four, we are considering them as overall inactive. Where there's activity in any of those four criteria, we are considering them as active. Okay, okay, so our total vendor count is 1678. 997 are actually inactive, which means 59.4% of our vendors are inactive as of date. So you have to do the similar analysis for your non-organization. So that's all. Now you can see that you have the complete information, right, on the active and inactive vendor master. I hope my video has helped you turning the knowledge into a real skill, because demonstrations help a lot. Because theoretical knowledge is one thing, and turning into a proper skill through by going through the same journey, like how you can do it in your SAP environment. You can apply the same principle if you are using Oracle or any other similar ERP system. So this demonstration, I believe, has shown you the how to pull this data and transform into a usable vendor master analysis. And as we can have seen, the calculator vendor master is not just about a messy data, it also contains a lot of risks, right? So every inactive vendor master sitting in your environment, in your organization, is a gap that can be exploited, whether through error or intentional fraud. So cleaning it up is one of the simplest and highest impact things an audit or procurement team can do, right? If this walkthrough helped you, please hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it means more deep dives like this one heading your way. Until then, this has been Deep Dive Audits. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.